guys, this is Erica Weston with Fox Sports Midwest, and you're listening to my favorite St. Louis Blues hockey podcast, Let's Go Blues Radio.
All set for the face-off at center ice. And for the St. Louis Blues, that's Red Berenson, number 7 at center ice, 17 Don McKenney, and Jerry Melnick, number 16 on the right wing, Barclay Plager, and Jimmy Roberts are on the defense.
He's in alone, a shot, he scores! Brett Hall, number 86! Right in front, the score by York! Oh, baby, the Blues win it in overtime! I don't believe it! Now play back for Perron. He comes in, fires it, he scores! A rocket by David Perron! And the Blues win it in overtime! They did it! It's over! The game is over! The series is over! The wait is over! And the St. Louis Blues are the Stanley Cup champions for the first time in franchise history!
It's all about the flow.
And the snow.
Flow.
And the snow.
And welcome to Let's Go Blues Radio. My God, I forgot how long that open was that I created. But this is Season 9, Episode 2, franchise episode number 268. And this is not our typical live show. It's going to sound a little different. Obviously, you've got your host, Jeff Pondry, here talking at the open rather than Kurt Price. Kurt and Bill are not joining me, but I do have two gentlemen on the show today. One is a St. Louis Blues podcaster as well. He's been on the show before. I've been on his show, or I'd like to think we're friends. I don't know. Maybe we'll see if he still feels that way by the end of the show. We'll see. Jason Martine of the Blues Hockey Podcast joins the show. Jason, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
How are things over in Blues Hockey Podcast land?
Going well. We had to take a small break there for a little bit. But now we're just like you guys, getting ready for the off season and getting some plans done. We had to have a small little break around the playoffs. Unfortunately, timing wasn't great for myself, and I had to have minor surgery, so it was on my mouth, so kind of hard to talk for a podcast. So we missed part of the playoffs, which sucked because I missed talking Blues hockey. But we caught up. It would have been nice to go a little bit longer, but we're back at it. So weird season. So we're ready for off season. So let's get into it.
I feel like Chris is one of those guys, your co-host on the show, Chris Frank, who could probably talk for a whole show by himself, just kind of bounce ideas off himself. You guys should have just done that. You could have just sat there and recorded the episode. Get him drunk, let him talk.
About it, and we talked about it. I told him, like, I can just, like, have, like, a written down thing, be like, here's a written down idea, go, and he could easily do it. And I could say, like, a little bit. I just can't talk for long periods of time when I had that. I could be like, so the Blues played really well, and then I could let them go. Or the Blues played really, really bad and let them go. And it would have worked.
Probably would have.
Podcast, but we just decided to hold off just to be safe.
Yeah, that's true. So there's a reason that Jason is joining me today. It's because another friend of the show we've had on multiple times, I think twice, Dominik Jansky of Lighthouse Hockey, lighthousehockey.com, the SB Nation blog. Dominik, actually, the way I met Dominik was through Jason and Chris. So I decided it'd be fun to have Jason on here as well, just to kind of talk with Dominik. But before we get into the reason why Dominik's on the show, I want to introduce him and thank him again for coming on the show. Dominik, how's it going?
Pretty good. I'm all pumped up and ready to go after that intro. Had original era John Kelly and new era John Kelly on there and all other stuff. I'm ready to go.
Oh yeah, man. I actually made that intro for one random episode, and it only aired once, and Kurt and Bill, the co-hosts of the show, never saw it, and so I surprised them with it when the show started. They were like, "What the hell is this?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's right, folks. So we got some Dan Kelly and some John Kelly and some Ken Wilson for you." But yeah, it's always fun working with old Blues clips like that. So Dominik, again, for those that maybe haven't heard you on the show before, or maybe haven't read a lot of what you've written, you are an Islanders fan, but you are in St. Louis, and you're also a Blues fan. I guess the only way to ask this question is explain yourself.
Yes, as quickly as possible. I guess my dad was an immigrant who followed the Blues from their inception when Al Arbour was captain and then coach. And when the Blues let him go as coach, he did not agree with it. He got snapped up by the Islanders. Scotty Bowman said, "Don't take the job; you'll lose for 10 years there." In year 8, he was winning the Stanley Cup, first of 4 in a row. And anyway, when I came along, my dad was like, you can be a Blues fan, yeah, but you should pay attention to Al Arbour and the Islanders. And so I've just kind of had double allegiances, like American League, National League kind of situation ever since. And so I get my muse out writing at Lighthouse Hockey.
So are you the managing editor over there? What's your title?
Yeah, whatever you want to call it, I guess. I founded the site, so I've just led it ever since. So yeah, editor-in-chief, manager, I don't know, founder.
Founder, yeah. So how long's Lighthouse Hockey been around?
Since 2008.
Okay, great. And then let's go. Yeah. I was gonna say, good Lord, you've witnessed some really rough teams. You've been through a couple bad years, especially maybe with the backup goalie becoming GM.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason. I think we've even made jokes about Garth Snow on this show, but yeah. So again, you're friends with Jason. That's why I wanted to have Jason on the show as well. But the big reason I want to have you on the show is because, as anyone who's watching the NHL right now knows, that the New York Islanders are going on this Cinderella run, and I compare it slightly to the St. Louis Blues last year, just because it was just not expected. This was a team that did not finish in the top 4. They had to play in their round. They had to beat the Florida Panthers, and then they go on. They beat a couple really good teams in Washington and Philadelphia. Now I know we're going to talk about happiness with the New York Islanders and great things and how awesome this is, and comparatively speaking to the Blues after a Game 1 devastating loss to the Tampa Bay Lightning. So I know that might be a little difficult, right. But comparing because again, you are a Blues fan. You witnessed the Blues raise the cup last year. Now back-to-back years, you're seeing Eastern Conference team do it. What's that like for you?
I've had some of those dreams. I've you get to the conference final and you start to picture it and think like, my God, this could be a reality, after, it's the same as last year, after years and years of suffering and really while the Blues had a lot of near misses, the Islanders simply haven't had that at all. So it's great. I know we were talking earlier, it stinks that they don't get to do it at the Coliseum, which is still up and running for at least one more year, but it's cool. It's kind of therapy for the fan base. This is the first conference final since Pierre Turgeon was with them in '93 when they what I call it was they knocked off the Penguins in a dynasty interruptus. They stopped the Penguins' run at 2, which isn't really a dynasty in my book. And it's just been, it's a ride. It's a thrill. It's totally different from last year because people are only watching from home, but I don't know, with the whole pandemic Zoom life that everybody's been in, there's been a lot of fun, like distant virtual fan joy and connections with this. So I would say I believed more in the Blues last year than I did in the Islanders. I think that the Blues had a team that off season that I thought was built to do what they did. They just had a horrible start, whereas the Islanders, I think they're good enough to be where they are now, but any further will be truly Cinderella.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of people We're expecting maybe some noise from the Islanders this year after what we've seen lately, but it's definitely interesting to see the run they've had. And again, it's not just beating Florida and then maybe getting by a couple weak teams here and there. I mean, they knocked out two of the powerhouses in the Eastern Conference. And what do you think was the biggest factor in them being able to get by teams like Washington and Philadelphia?
I think definitely Barry Trotz. He has them believing, he has them just ridiculously disciplined and structured, where all four lines know where each other is at all times. All the defensemen know exactly what situations to pinch and who's going to cover for them. They know when to step up in the neutral zone to disrupt the rush. So, I mean, it starts with him, absolutely. And this is more like Islanders minutia, but they were pretty good in the first half of the season. Adam Pelech, who's kind of an unknown defenseman, but is just like they call him the Cobra. Like he's got a sneaky stick that disrupts so much offense. And when he got hurt in the second half of the start of their kind of tailspin, but they made some good deadline acquisitions. They got Andy Green to replace him, and he's actually, now that Pelech's back, Green's like a good sixth guy. And they got Pajot from Ottawa, who's just fit right in and has made them deep four down the middle at center. So it's, I'd say Trotz, the deadline acquisitions, and Adam Pelech coming back, which they thought he was lost for the end of the season when it was interrupted. But one benefit of the pandemic was that he was able to be back, and he stepped right back into form this playoffs.
Jason, you've been watching a lot of hockey after the Blues were trounced, or have you kind of taken a step back from it?
I usually have, I used to last year, because of last year, it makes it easier for me to keep watching hockey. I usually have a 2-week mourning period after the Blues are out. But I've been watching a lot, and I guess the Islanders are the closest thing I think that's left of what the Blues kind of embody. And obviously, just knowing that Dominik, I always kind of my East team is usually the Islanders. I always like to watch them, mainly because of the Garth Snow just ridiculousness. That always makes it entertaining. With the Ho-Sang stuff and all that stuff, that was always funny. But honestly, when they got a Pajot at the deadline, I said on our show, and I said to Chris, that's probably the best deadline pickup anybody's had in the last handful of years. Because I also signed him for a good term. Because I saw Pajot he was just in Ottawa. He's kind of very underrated, just being in Ottawa. And he's a guy who can play both ends and has a nice little scoring touch, and he's still relatively young. And he, like Dominik said, he fits right in, and I think that was made their team just so great and it's so fun to watch. Barry Trotz is kind of like what I call him the other day. I called him the New Age Ken Hitchcock, just because he just kind of has the defensive system down. And this, your teams are always play close, and no matter what goal you have in, you're gonna. It's kind of you can insert a goalie and get a good performance. They have Greiss and Varlamov, which are two capable goalies. So just watching a lot of hockey. It's been great, and following the Islanders, especially in the East. It's interesting watching with no fans, but I think I've adapted just like everybody else.
Yeah, it's. I mean, this is definitely something we've talked about on this show a lot. I know, Jason, you and Chris had a conversation recently, I believe, on your most recent show. It's odd, but I mean, I guess for Dominik, for you, the question I'd have for that is, watching your team succeed and go through the motions of getting to the Eastern Conference Final in this setting. How different is that from last year?
It's a 180 for sure. I mean, I was one of those, I didn't think they would be able to pull off the bubble to begin with. It just sounded like, too much work involved, too many stages. yeah, it's definitely like not quite anticlimactic because it's still. I mean, I think it's a big deal. The Islanders haven't been this far in so long, so that keeps everybody riding high. And we've definitely enjoyed, that the Islanders had a captain who you guys may have seen this news who he left via free agency to Toronto.
Matt Sundin,
Doug
Sundin. Gilmore. No.
Alexei Yashin.
Alexei
One of the pitches, for Tavares was like that whole, if you win in the playoffs in Toronto, it's going to be like nothing else. And so we've all been enjoying saying like, damn, they were right. Winning playoff series in Toronto really is a blast. You should have tried that, stuck around and tried that. But so no, I mean it's different but it's also it's a great kind of relief and distraction from everything else going on. So I'll take it.
I did enjoy as much as I am not a Bruins fan, I did enjoy a lot of the tweets from Bruins fans that were saying, hey, look, Boston won a series in Toronto before the Maple Leafs did.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so actually, I hope this doesn't make you guys too concerned. You don't really need to be. We've only got a couple people because this was not announced. Apparently, YouTube decided that we are going to go live. So we are live right now, folks.
Yeah.
And so we have a couple comments from a couple of our close listeners here. Austin Lynch, friend of the show, asks, Jeff, how's your night going? It's going well, sir. Hopefully you're enjoying your virtual learning. Austin, I believe he's a senior, in Afton. Yes, it's weird that I'm so intimately in touch with our listeners, but he is a very long-time listener.
With the kids?
Yes. Hey, I know what's going on. I play the Fortnite. But Jimmy Anderson also chimes in. Jimmy's our resident crazy guy. We've actually had him on for trivia before. Says, awesome to see you guys live. Cheers. I'll go ahead and add to everybody listening now that in the future, we actually will have some planned live shows for Let's Go Blues Radio. So keep that going, guys. He says, Jimmy also adds, let's keep this chat rolling. Grab some beers, boys. If I would have known that we were going to go live, yes, I would have had a beer of the episode. But right now I'm just drinking apple cider. So, yes, sorry, no beer of the episode today, Jimmy. But getting back to our conversation about the Islanders and relaying it to the Blues, you mentioned the John Tavares thing. I mean, that is one of the weirdest things I've seen. It was totally just botched, in my opinion, I guess, by the Islanders to, and it was just, oh my gosh, this team's going to be set back years and years and years. And, Garth Snow, his final screw job, and that's why they went out and got Lamoriello. That's why they got Barry Trotz to try and bring him back. He went to Toronto. All of a sudden, the Islanders are a playoff team. They're playing a structure that is just working. And now we're seeing them in the conference finals long before John Tavares and the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, the talk in New York just has to be, we're better off without Tavares, right? But I mean, the real thing to me would be, imagine if they had Trotz and they had Lamoriello and they were able to retain Tavares. Do you think we'd still be seeing the success that we're seeing if Tavares was still there?
Yeah, I think they would, because Tavares, I'll knock him now because he left and he was kind of, it felt shady because, fans were just like, if you were going to go all along, like we could have gotten something for you, but really ownership had stepped in and wouldn't allow. They were like, Snow, you're not allowed to trade him. They were always flirting with his agent too to see if he would take a hockey executive position and stuff. So, I mean, that's a whole other drama. But I think Tavares is a serious enough player. I mean, he's always been about improving. When he came into the league, his skating was a question mark, and he just went out and he gained a step. He got so much stronger on his feet, more than your typical 19-year-olds as he comes of age does. So I think under Trotz, he probably just would have been, just eating up the instruction and the chance to actually play a role. we would have seen fewer, minute 15 long shifts and other things from them. So I think they'd be outstanding, but it's water under the bridge. And actually, other than the jokes and the quips, which are mostly at the kind of obnoxious Toronto media and some of their worst fan base's expense, it's otherwise people are just enjoying the ride. And it's you root against the Leafs even more now. You most of us kind of hope that he never gets his dream there. And it's really fun to watch how these guys play under Trotz. I mean, there's guys who are sort of in the shadows who you knew had talent, like Brock Nelson and Josh Bailey, but were never like just consistent game breakers before. And I think now it's because they have good coaching, they have a defined role, they have a guy who explains what their purpose is, and they do it every night, and then everybody's just pulling on the same rope. And sometimes when you just have that star-centered team that's around one guy, other players kind of get lost in the shuffle. But I do think Trotz would have figured a way around that even if Tavares was still there, but he's not. So I'm liking how it's going now.
Yeah, and with that top line now of Anders Lee, Matthew Barzal, and Jordan Eberle, that's one of the best clicking lines I've seen in the playoffs. I mean, it's and Barzal's speed. My God, you can't contain that guy.
It's so surreal to see a guy like to know how fast NHLers are above anybody else in the world, and then to see a guy like Barzal making most NHLers, just shaking their skates. It's pretty sweet. That was the most clicking top line I had seen until Game 1 when the Lightning lit the Islanders up.
Yeah, I mean, that's what are your thoughts after that game? Let's go ahead and ask that. I mean, do you think there's a good chance the Islanders just bounce back and get back to their game, or do you think this is going to be all Lightning?
Yeah, I think they'll bounce back. I mean, the Lightning have always been that team that's capable of this, and you kind of wondered why they weren't putting it all together. Each year there was some disappointment, but it's funny. Last year with them getting shut down by Columbus, I feel like that was exactly what they needed. Then they get Columbus in the first round and pay them back, and now I think they're prepared to a man to make the commitment you need to make against a team, like how Tortorella coached Columbus and how the Islanders are under Trotz. So I think the Islanders will make a series of it. I haven't ruled them out, but I always kind of feared that, okay, if once they get far enough to run into Tampa or Boston, who they never matched up with well, that it's going to be tough. I think these games will be closer. Last night was kind of a, fatigue and other things setting in the Lightning just exploding out of a cannon after resting for a week. But I don't see them getting blown out like that again. Yeah,
I don't see that either. So I want to ask both of you, being St. Louis guys, I had a conversation with my wife last night. Actually, it wasn't last night. I guess that would have been Saturday night, Game 7 with Philadelphia. Scott Mayfield scored that big goal, and Mayfield's a St. Louis boy, and I get excited. I mean, obviously Pat Maroon last year, that's a completely different story because he was on the Blues, but anytime a St. Louis boy does anything well, even Matthew Tkachuk, as much as we want to hate the guy, I get excited, and I love seeing St. Louis boys go on to do something great in the NHL. Do you guys feel the same way? Obviously, I know, Dominik, you're rooting for Scott Mayfield for obvious reasons, but do you guys feel the same way about St. Louis hockey players?
You go ahead, Dominik.
Okay. Yeah, I usually do. There's some I don't like, or some I feel like, that was the obnoxious kid you played against, not literally, but like too similar to, some of the guys you wouldn't have liked in hockey growing up. But yeah, for the most part, I do. And Mayfield really is a good story. He was, I think Webster Groves High, and then he went to a junior team in Ohio. When he was drafted, it was like early second round, but it was for his size and reach. he didn't have a lot of offensive punch, but he's one of those guys who he did his time in the AHL, and they just kept grooming him along, and he stuck with it, and so now suddenly he's like one of their go-to defensemen. So yeah, I love seeing a guy like him succeed.
Yeah, it's kind of cool to see. Every single team has some kind of St. Louis connection right now. Obviously, Maroon and Tampa, Stastny on Vegas, Mayfield and on the Islanders.
Maroon,
so it's real interesting.
Lightning. Yeah,
Maroon,
that's the last one.
So,
yep.
Yeah, so it's interesting to and he's the last person who has a chance to be a back-to-back Stanley Cup, which would be another cool accomplishment for a St. Louis kid to have a back-to-back Stanley Cup, one with their hometown team and then another one with a different team would be kind of cool. Like I said, I think the Mayfield story is very cool after reading up his Chesterfield kid. So it's really cool to see his Stastny I think would be another great story, just with his dad's lineage, and then also what he had his chance here for many different reasons, just didn't work out with the Blues. Just you can say his where he got assigned on the lines he got, the line mates he had, or just pure bad luck for what he had on the team. So there's a good story all around with St. Louis kids, and I think it's always fun to watch, no matter what team you root for. It's fun to find those guys if you didn't know, because a lot of people didn't know that Scott Mayfield was from St. Louis until now. So I think it's kind of like risen his profile even more after that Game 7 goal. I think that kind of put him in a lot of eyes. St. Louis, they're kind of kids' radars that it's like, oh yeah, he's from St. Louis too. That's awesome. So it's always fun to kind of see what guys are from St. Louis. So hopefully Mayfield's the one to raise a cup this year.
Yeah, I'm hoping the same. Mayfield again. I'd love to see Stastny get one. This may be his, I guess, only chance. We'll see, but I'm not ready for the Vegas Golden Knights to win a Stanley Cup. I feel like their fans need to go through a little bit more torture, like the three of us have with our teams. But and obviously Dallas can't win, can't have that happen. Tampa's fine, but Islanders. That's who I'm going for. All the way. So we got a couple questions here, and actually one's from co-host Bill Day, who's chimed in to the live show, but kind of the same one Jimmy's asking here in our chat. He says, we kind of talked about this when I did the trivia thing. Lightning came out and did what everyone feared, an explosive team showing no sign of fatigue. And Bill said to make sure to ask you, Dominik, are you worried about this series, which we kind of already talked about. Actually, I guess he's asking more about the goaltending. Are you worried about the goaltending situation right now on the island?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you look at the recipe you need for the playoffs, you're like, okay, the goalie, always need some of those stand on their head performances. And Varlamov actually pleasantly surprised me early in the playoffs for the number of good performances he did have. I don't think he's a bad goalie. He's just kind of average, which means on average he's not going to give you an extended hot run. I frankly always trusted Greiss more. Greiss was the reason the Islanders broke their playoff series drought in 2016 when they finally knocked off the Panthers. The Panthers outplayed them just ridiculously, but the Islanders won 3 overtime games, and Greiss was the main man for that series. So yeah, I mean, that worries me, and that you start to get those dreams as you get closer, like, man, this could happen. And that's the one spot where I'm like, but it would really have to be like everything going just right. And I've seen Greiss do that, at least for a round. Varlamov, I'm not so sure. And they kind of default to him. Like, I don't know who they're going to start next game after that one, but they sort of default to him, I think, because he's the guy signed to a 4-year deal. He's the guy they want to keep happy, whereas Greiss is going to walk because they've got a hotshot Russian prospect coming in from the KHL for next year. So, yeah, you talk about the slim odds or the things you really need for everything to go right, and maybe outside of Dallas, they have the weakest goaltending left in the playoffs.
So, I mean, that's an interesting conversation. This is similar, I guess, to what the Blues had with Binnington's contract coming up after their Stanley Cup run last year. But you've got your hotshot Russian coming in. I am so bad with names, I can't even pronounce it, but I know you know it, Dominic.
Ilya Sorokin. Yeah,
Sorokin.
He's been the top goalie in the KHL for a few years. You know, he's probably going to be outstanding, and he really gives me hope for the next few years after this one. But I don't know how much it was a motivation to sign Varlamov because of their friendship or what. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask. So we're I don't want to jinx anything. We're all hockey fans here, so we're all very superstitious people, I'm sure. But let's just say the Islanders go the distance. They get it done in 2020. Does that make their goaltending situation more difficult depending on who wins it? I mean, let's say Thomas Greiss steps in and plays phenomenal and wins them a cup. Could he walk at the end of the season?
Oh yeah, I think without question that's what'll happen. Lou, I mean, unless Lou finds a taker for Varlamov, but yeah, I think that's been in the plan, and which really that's what makes Greiss such a perfect 1A or guy who can be a backup for a long stretch and then just take the starter's role. Like, he is such a chill German dude who's like, okay, whatever. You don't hear from him for weeks, and then actually in 2016, I think it was because Halak was injured that Greiss stepped in and took over for that playoff series. But yeah, I mean, he's still got it. I think he's going to be a perfect, he would have been a good answer for Montreal there instead of them trading for Jake Allen. But it seems like that's the plan. They're going to let him walk, and Sorokin step in, and they'll have an all. Well,
that'll look bad if Sorokin steps in and just does nothing for the Islanders.
Yeah, it really will. Yeah, because you don't know. He was dominant in the KHL, but he was also on one of the KHL's top teams, and that's a very top heavy league. So
right. That's true. So just a couple more questions about the Islanders, and I want to get into a little bit of Blues talk with you guys before we close up shop here. But the heart and soul line for the New York Islanders, that's a line for me that I've really enjoyed watching. It kind of reminds me of some of the Blues fourth lines that we've seen, the Martin, Cizikas, Clutterbuck line. I mean, they're good. They are solid. They forecheck. They play their positions well, but they're also, to me, they're pretty dangerous to score goals. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that assessment that that's a dangerous fourth line in the NHL to deal with?
Yeah, absolutely. It starts with Cizikas, who he's a middle line center dressed as a checker. He's just really smart, and he reads the play so well, and his line mates know him so well. Clutterbuck, we haven't really seen it this playoffs, but he's got a deceptively dangerous wrist shot when he lets it go. And then Martin has semi-stone hands, but he knows how to get to the right places and get those dirty goals. And he's also outscored all of the Toronto Stars in these playoffs. So that's another enjoyable thing for Islanders fans. But yeah, it's a fun line to watch. They're getting up there in years and contracts too, so I don't know how much longer they'll be a combo. But fun combo and dangerous. And in the Flyers series, this is what. So Sean Couturier, probably their best center, especially now that Claude Giroux's a shell of his former self. Cizikas matched up with Couturier a whole lot, and if you've got that canceling out your top two-way center, and then you've got three other lines with Barzal and Peugeot and Brock Nelson, I mean, you're set up to control play. So I like that line is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll ask Dominik this too. So it's I think every time I saw Matt Martin in the past, I always thought more of enforcer type guy, where he was just a guy out there just to kind of protect the Stars. And it seems like over the last couple years, I think Cizikas has kind of brought, maybe with Clutterbuck, maybe two being with him, maybe got him more of playing a role instead of just playing the enforcer guy to go out there and just kind of intimidate. It seems like he, like you said, doesn't have the best hands or maybe skating, but he goes out there and does a job compared to just being kind of an enforcer role.
Definitely. And and they were together before Trotz, but they were more of that traditional, like, go out and bang, change the momentum, whatever. But under Trotz the last 2 years, you're exactly right that he knows his role. He knows where to go more. And that can make a slower skater a lot faster because they read each other and they know what's expected of them. And their own defense knows where they're going to be too. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and my last question about the Islanders, and Jason, if you have anything you want to add, asking Dominik after this as well, feel free to jump in. But there's two players who, to me, I either like or have stood out to me during this run. One's JG Pageau. That was a guy that I was hoping the Blues were going to go out and get, and it feels like he has slotted in really well for the Islanders. Been a nice pickup for them. And then the other deadline acquisition, Andy Green, was a guy that you said they got him in place of Pelech because of injury, and it was okay. That's just a veteran guy that they're going to add to the lineup, but I really feel like he's added another dimension to that defensive core there on the island. He's been steady. He's been smart. He's pinching when he needs to, and he's just played some good hockey down the stretch for the Islanders. What have those two players, those acquisitions, meant for the Islanders? I mean, have they played a big part in seeing what they've done this postseason?
Yeah, I mean, and I don't think they're here to this point without either of them. Pageau, like you said, he fits in so well, and like Jason said, he's younger. He's a good, just multi-talented, yappy Frenchman, can play on both special teams, and they've had him with a bunch of different line combos. He makes any line mate look good. Green's one of those guys. I saw him against the Islanders for years with New Jersey, and it's that classic defenseman where you're not that impressed because you don't really realize everything that's going on when you're rooting for the team that's trying to get through them. And so you're focused on your forwards and, oh God, why is Green always in the middle of this? But watching him now more closely, he's a very good, steady defenseman, and plays well with any partner. Usually he's got a faster partner with the Islanders, but it's helped to have him with Nick Leddy, who Leddy struggled a little bit with finding an identity at times. So, I think without both of those acquisitions, they wouldn't have made it this far.
And I'll tell you, Dominik, if the Islanders can pull this out, I will buy you a beer, sir, because that will be one impressive run.
Yeah.
Jason, why not? You can come too, I guess.
Maybe. We'll see.
So I want to talk a little Blues with you guys before we end this. But obviously the big news coming out last week, about a week ago now, Jake Allen traded to the Montreal Canadiens. Dominik kind of mentioned it there briefly. Just want to get some quick thoughts from you two. What did you think of the trade, and do you think it was something that down the road will benefit the Blues? Jason, let's start with you.
All right. Well, I think like everybody, initially you saw what they got back was basically a third and a seventh for Allen and a seventh in I think 2022. You obviously want more because you remember Brian Elliott got you a second round pick, which was Jordan Kyrou at the end of the day. But people, I think when you look closer, there's going to be a massive goaltending carousel after this season. There's going to be guys floating around different teams nonstop and free agency. Like you said, Grice is one of those that will probably be available. And if he does very well, that's going to attract him to a lot of teams who's looking for possibly a starter or a 1A, 1B type guy. So it was good for Doug Armstrong to get that cap hit off the books. You would like to get more. I think Ville Husso is a guy that they've talked up for years. He's kind of maybe fallen down maybe a little bit compared to what you thought he was going to be, but I think he's still going to be a solid backup goaltender, and you eventually got to give the kid a chance. You can keep him in the minors forever and forever. Me and Chris talked about there's a potential depending what they would do. I thought they might keep Allen and potentially carry 3 goalies next year, depending on how next season looks. You really don't know what next season is going to look like. Depending on how everything shakes out with COVID, there could be not an AHL season next year. You might have to carry kind of like what MLB is doing, like a taxi squad that you kind of keep off to the side. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had 3 goalies, but I think you got to give Ville Husso a chance. And I think at the end of the day, I'd rather have Alex Pietrangelo for the next 7-8 years than one more year of Jake Allen. And I think that's the kind of rationale that Blues fans have to look at the end of the day. You get a pick back. It's a pretty deep draft from what they were saying. So get a couple draft picks, start rebuilding your minor league system, and go from there. So I like it for what they're trying to accomplish this offseason.
Well, I'm been informed that Dominik has dropped, so I think he'll probably jump back in. I'm guessing he maybe had some internet issues, but Jason, so we'll keep going with this. And honestly, you're kind of echoing a lot of what was said on last week's Let's Go Blues Radio with Kurt and Bill. Was yes, you'd love to keep Jake Allen in a perfect world. The salary cap goes up. You can find other moves if you have to. You have a solid backup one more year, and you can make another deep run with 2 solid goalies. But it's just not a perfect world right now. So you have to do what you can to, and it's a matter of getting your captain, your star defenseman locked up, as opposed to keeping your backup goalie. And I think that's the only way you can really look at it. You know, when you look at the deals that were probably out there and that are out there now still, Jake Allen is a sought after guy. So you got to make the move. You just got to move that salary where you can. And obviously Montreal made a good offer for him. I don't know if you'd get a lot better because like you or Dominik said earlier, that is a team that, or that's a position that is going to be a weird carousel this offseason. There's so many good free agent goaltenders that once you get to free agency, there may not be anybody interested in Jake Allen because there's so many goalies out there that they think, oh, we could probably get this guy cheaper. So moving him now, I think, was key.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that if you kind of do a general look around the NHL, Dominik talked about it earlier, where there's a lot of influx of young goalies coming in that are very highly touted or have a lot of potential. Carter Hart has already kind of taken the net in Philly. I know Washington's very high in their Russian goalie. And New York, Islanders have their guy coming in. And I think there's a couple of teams that are really high on some guys coming up. I think Vancouver, and he proved it. Thatcher Demko looks like he's going to be a real deal. Might not be ready to handle the number 1 duties, but he can definitely be your 1B right now. So you're having a lot of influx of very young, good goaltenders on top of having guys who are maybe still in their prime slightly, but also kind of on their way out where they're on their last contract. So it's kind of a weird offseason. So it's one of the point where teams, if they trust these young goalies, they're going to go with that and invest in the team and their players compared to a goalie. And hopefully you have a goalie that you can ride throughout the season and into the playoffs and have a good team around him. And you spend money that way, especially with the cap being flat for the next 2 years. Yeah.
No, I agree. So what's next for the Blues? You think there's going to be, I mean, obviously they got to make more moves probably if they want to get Pietrangelo locked up. What do you think comes next?
Yeah. I know a lot of people were talking about like, well, why didn't you trade Bozak? Why didn't you buy out Steen? That's not an option. Bozak has a limited no trade, and I think he wants to stay. Steen has a full no trade, and I think that's buyouts are just not a Blues thing. That's just what this ownership doesn't do. They're one of the few teams, or maybe the only team left in NHL who hasn't used any kind of compliance buyout in the last handful of years. So I think getting Petro re-signed and you're going to move somebody out, and I don't know who it is. It could be Vince Dunn. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. They're very, very high on Perunovich, very high on him. He's Vince Dunn-esque, if not better, from what everybody is saying. So if they think he can step in and do the job, I wouldn't be surprised if they possibly move Vince Dunn for draft capital at this point, or package him with a contract to move it to a team that can take it. That's another option too. There's going to be at least one more move, in my opinion. I don't know who it's going to be. I would like him to keep Dunn and Petro and move somebody else, like everybody else I think would like that. But I think you're pretty much they're at the team that won the cup. You're going to see this is the last year. Next year's going to be the last year. You're going to see that team as a unit. And after that, you're going to see that's when the turnover starts, because a lot of those contracts are over. You have the expansion draft next year, so you're going to have a lot of turnover, and the team's going to start to shift its core to the guys like Thomas. I'm not as high on Kyrou as other people are, but guys like that you're going to see start to take more of a leadership role, and maybe Petro's still part of that group. I don't know. In a couple of years, you also got Parayko's contract is up. I don't know if you can pay him more than the $5. I think it's around $5.25 million. I don't think you can pay him more than that. It'd be hard, especially if you still have Justin Falk.
You don't want to be Doug Armstrong right now, is basically what you're saying. It's a tough call right now.
Yeah, it is a real tough call, and I said this on our show this past week. But I never count the guy out.
No, me neither. I used to, not anymore.
Like a deal. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. We kind of talked about like the deals he's made in the last 5 years. I think that's something we're going to dive into in the off season. We're going to look at his trade history and we're going to rate each trade and see how it turned out. You know, hindsight's 20/20, but at least you can see how it is. Off the top of my head, honestly, you can say the one that really didn't work out is the TJ Oshie trade, where it's somebody who went on, won a cup, and still played at a high level. But a lot of the trades after that have worked out pretty decently over the last couple of years. I mean, I'm a big Patrick Berglund fan, but no way you could have thought you could flip Patrick Berglund and Vladimir Sobotka for Ryan O'Reilly. And
Agreed.
It happened.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's I don't count the guy out, and I think that Allen trade is step one of 5 or 6 in the offseason. I think he's going to do a lot of different things, and I think the Petro deal is, I said it's going to happen. I'm guessing 8 years, around $8 million, 8.25 is what I'm thinking.
Dominik, let me go ahead and get you, since you're back in the conversation here. We're talking right now about what's next for the Blues after the Allen trade. So in your opinion, what do you see being the next chip to fall, since they obviously want to re-sign Alex Pietrangelo?
Yeah, I'm kind of in where Jason was saying of not counting Doug Armstrong out. I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, they still need to whittle away to make room for Petro. And maybe he's going to, punt a little bit and not make all of the moves until he knows that he's got him signed. Because if he's not, then, he might not have to hurt the rest of the roster. But I just wonder, if one of those other forwards that we value a lot is going to go, or if a younger forward would have to go in terms of getting somebody to buy to take some more cap away. It's really hard to peg right now with a flat cap that has compressed everybody, because it just limits. I mean, I think that's why we saw that kind of low return on Allen. It just limits the flexibility here, where he was probably in a position of, it's more important that I get rid of this cap money now when I know that I can do it, rather than be stuck later in this offseason needing that money, to make room for Petro. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of just watching with great interest and hope that he figures it out. I think even like the Falk deal, that hasn't worked out the way they wanted, especially the contract in particular, or the performance he's been so far. But it was like Armstrong being decisive, saying, I'm not going to wait around to find out that I don't have my number one or 1A right-handed defenseman. I'm going to go make this move and then deal with it, and also see if that convinces his captain to be a little flexible. So I'm at least optimistic that he figures it out, but I don't know how he's going to do it.
I'll just add right now, I am surprised to see, again, this was not supposed to be a live show, but we have a fair amount of listeners right now. So I guess we have some kind of reach on YouTube. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, this was not meant to be live. Otherwise we would have promoted it a bit more, but do want to add some people in the chat here. Of course, Kurt Price, we'll call him a friend of this episode, but usual host of the show, says Allen was worth next to nothing 2 years ago. A third and a seventh is fine. That was, if you want to hear more of Kurt's thoughts, he had some pretty good thoughts last week on our episode. That's season 9, episode 1. Jimmy Anderson, this is one that kind of goes over my head a little. Maybe Jason, maybe Dominik. I know you guys have kids too, so maybe you'll understand this one. I got a question for the Islanders guy. Why does Barry Trotz look identical to Randall Weems from the cartoon Recess? I have no idea who that is. Do you guys understand that one?
I get that reference.
I don't.
Yeah, I get that reference. That was it's on Disney Plus. So go ahead. I know everybody has Disney Plus. Look up Recess.
Okay.
You'll get that.
I know the show.
Cartoon. It used to be on Channel 11 back in the day.
Yeah, I know the show. I just don't. I never watched it
off the top of my head, but it's it's funny because I literally just saw that show come up on Disney Plus when my daughter was looking for something to watch, and I said, "Oh, they have Recess," so I get that reference. So kudos to him on that one.
Good. Well, Jimmy says please Google it. So I think the three of us should do that right now. But yes, I'll do that for sure. Thank you, Jimmy. Jimmy's our resident clown in our YouTube chat, and I think he would appreciate that. Again, this has been fun, guys. Jason from the Blues Hockey Podcast, Dominik from Lighthouse Hockey. What are your guys' predictions for the rest of the playoffs here? Go ahead, Dominik. We'll start with you.
Oof.
I know, tough call.
I mean, emotion and everything aside, I kind of thought this was the Lightning's year all around. I'll say if the Lightning somehow don't win this series, then it's the drive for 5 is on, and the Islanders will go away. Because if they can beat the Lightning, I'm not afraid of them getting through the Stars or the Knights. So that's sort of a semi, but yeah, my money's on the Lightning.
Yeah, my prediction is whoever gets it out of the East, whoever takes this series is probably going to win. Dallas has surprised me. I just got to eventually that goaltending is not gonna hold. Nothing against Kudobin. I just think that eventually that's just going to fall apart. And they've always had scoring problems for the last couple of years in Dallas, and it seems like it hasn't super affected them after the couple games early on. It did, but it seems like they've hit their stride and they've kind of been scoring regularly. Miro Heiskanen's been amazing, but I think whoever comes out of the East, and like I said, I'm doing part of the Yes movement over in the Isle. So I'm going with New York to. I said 7 because it's going to be a tough series because I think the Lightning, like Dominik said. I think last year when I got through Columbus this year, I said, "Ooh, the Lightning might have a shot this year." When I got through Columbus this year, but the Islanders surprised me, and I like the way they're playing, so I think the Islanders do it.
What's the big off season? Is there? I mean, obviously you mentioned Thomas Greiss, Dominik, but anything else top of your head? Any other big UFAs coming up for the Islanders this off season that they need to be looking out for?
Not UFA situation, but definitely Barzal needs a new deal, and that's going to be interesting in this environment where those RFAs are getting more money, but now we're in that flat cap. So that's the big, and for all the things that Lou Lamoriello has done well, managing the salary cap has not always been his strong suit. He's normally had to pull some kind of ninja move or shady deal that only he seems to be allowed to get away with at the league office to get out from under his cap issues. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles that, but that's the main off-season topic.
Well, I think we'll be on the lookout for that. So again, Jason from the Blues Hockey Podcast, Dominik from Lighthouse Hockey. Thank you both for coming on. Before I give the microphone over to both of you to tell people where they can find you on the web and on social media and how they can listen to your show and read your blog, Dominik, I wanted to ask you specifically about a post that you wrote last summer. Again, we had you on after the Blues won the Cup. And it was, I remember us having a very good conversation about how just awesome it was to witness that finally happen in our lifetimes. You wrote a very awesome post about it on Lighthouse Hockey about, hey, I know this isn't an Islanders news, but I want to share my thoughts on this. What was it like finally writing something about the Blues winning a Stanley Cup?
It's priceless, and it was, I think I wrote that after some of the post celebrations at like Obie Clark's out in the parking lot, and then working the parade. I mean, it was just unreal that, well, with my dad being a Blues fan and he's been long gone, but just all those thoughts going through your head to finally get to that moment. And for me, it was fun because like the Islanders fan base, there's a lot of people that lived through the dynasty. I was just a little tot and a kid, so just all I knew of was the Islanders is great. But so you've got like a lot who lived through the dynasty, and then tons who have seen nothing but misery. So it was kind of a way of giving them hope. Like some of these guys, their best highlight was '93 or even '02 when they lost an exciting first round series to Toronto. So just to kind of share that with some others and say like, hey, one day keep hanging in there. It might work out. So yeah, I mean, it's more than a year later, but I still cherish that high that we were on, and yeah, it's irreplaceable feeling. It was worth the wait.
Yeah, and you can't tell that I still cherish that high with all the stuff behind me here. I have just loaded my basement with Stanley Cup memorabilia. It's the same for me. And Jason, I know you can speak to this too. It's just we never thought it would happen. And I said up until last year's playoffs that I was never going to see the Blues win the Stanley Cup. It was just never going to happen. And I have a friend who's a Canucks fan, and I even told him, I go, just prepare yourself. You're never going to see the Canucks win either. It's just never going to happen for our franchises. And now when we talk, I tell him, hey man, you know what? The impossible happened. It's going to happen for you too. So it's given me such a more positive light about being a fan of any sports team, really. And it's just weird because even now, like Jason mentioned, when the Blues were out this year, you want to be mad, you want to be upset, but for me, I just kind of sat there during Game 6 when the Canucks were just dominating, and I just sat there and said, you know what I witnessed last year, it makes all this so much better, and I still had a smile on my face. So it sucks sometimes, but man, that high we had last year was unbelievable.
Yeah, I think, like I said, last year kind of makes like the next like handful of years like not matter, but like you just don't get like as mad as you would normally get mad after the Blues find a way to blow it again. Like I mean, because you saw how many years we've had, at least, but last, like we talked about the last decade or so, Blues have been pretty darn good. I mean, every year they've been, near the top of the Central or winning the Central, and then just they run into a team that is just that much better than them. And it was Chicago, Chicago and LA for those years they kept flip flopping, and you just couldn't get by that team. And then they got by that team, and then just ran out of gas in the conference finals, and against the San Jose Sharks. And the way last year's run happened, where it's like, oh man, they're not going to get by Dallas, and then the double overtime goal happens, and you're like, oh man, they played Sharks game 1, and then you watch it, like, well, at least it was a hell of a run to get through the second round. You had that maroon goal that you can hang your hat on, and then after the hand pass goal, they go on they just dominate for 3 games, and win it. And then you get to the Boston game, and then you're so excited for game 3 after they win that overtime, and they just get destroyed. Like in game 3, like everybody's so excited outside. I was hanging outside all day for 8 hours that day, just partying outside with everybody and just talking to any Blues fan around about, what we've gone through and just everything, and then winning game 7. So makes it all worth it, the highs and the lows. Yeah, just any fan out there that you think your team's just not going to win it, like, there's a chance. Like I said, a lot of fans that are in their, I'm in my late 30s now, and there's a lot of fans who grew up with the Cardinals now, and they didn't know, like, this team not making the playoffs. And when they didn't make the playoffs, they were very, very angry. And I was just like, you don't have no idea what disappointment is unless you're a Blues fan.
That's true.
So take a step back and it'll be okay. You've been spoiled for a very long time. So it makes you appreciate it that much more now. And, like I said, I'm the same way with Jeff. I redid my office completely and got stuff all over the place. And as a reminder all the time, you just smile when you see the banners behind me, as you can probably see in the video there.
Yeah.
You just walk in and see that every day. And when I'm doing work, then you just have a little smile on your face. You remember all the run that year, and maybe 20 years later, I'll probably have the same smile on my face when I walk in and see that banner, and hopefully a couple more banners. You never know. So it's been good, and like I said, let's hopefully get some more.
Yep, I'm with you. Yeah, we I tell this story every now and then. I'm going to try to rotate my camera here because I know it's not showing up. But the What a Trip article from after Game 5 in the Stanley Cup Final last year, that's also hanging behind me. And I actually had somebody join me. It was actually a friend of mine on a Zoom call for work last summer. He's from Boston, big Boston Bruins fan. I didn't even think about it. We had texted about the series, and he had congratulated me. And it was like the first day that I had this hung up. And he comes on the Zoom call and he sees that, and he just goes, "You are kidding me, right?" And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "That bullshit over your shoulder." And of course, I look the other way. I'm like, "Well, yeah, man, come on. They won the cup." And he goes, "No, the Game 5 shit." And I'm like, "Oh, that wasn't even for you. I just love that headline." So yeah, it's so dude, I got so much memorabilia from that I'm going to pass on to my son, who's become quite a Blues fan. So yeah, it's something that out of the three of us and everybody listening, we'll never forget. Want to get to one more comment here on YouTube, and then we'll get to closing up the show. Brad Warthog, somebody who I don't believe we've ever had comment on the show. So Brad, welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in live. Any truth to maybe moving Dunn this offseason in addition to like a Bozak or Steen to lock up Petro? I will tell you, we are going to podcast this episode. Plus, you can always check this out on YouTube later. We did kind of talk about that a little bit earlier with Jason and Dominik, but I think right now anything's on the table. I think the answer that all three of us kind of gave is never count Doug Armstrong out and never think that there's not a move he's considering or not considering. So I think there is a possibility that Dunn might get moved. We'll see. Scott Perunovich coming up next year. He's a guy that could probably step in and, maybe not play at the level of Vince Dunn his first season, but he's definitely a Vince Dunn type player. So I think there is some truth to that, but I think it's just because there's truth to Doug Armstrong is just taking calls right now and making calls and basically doing anything he can to try and get his captain locked up. So first we'll go to Jason. So again, guys, I want to thank you for coming on, but Jason, of the Blues Hockey Podcast, tell our listeners where they can find you on the web, how they can listen to your show, and how they can interact with you on social media.
Okay, and so usually I have my co-host Chris, who we've been doing it for about 6 seasons now. So a little bit behind Jeff and Kurt and Bill. So I always make the joke we're the second most original Blues Hockey Podcast. So anyway, but the jokes besides, you can find us on our website, blueshockeypodcast.net. If you need to find us to download the podcast, it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, all the different kind of casts that are out there. We're on it. Let's see. And on the social medias, Twitter, it's at Blues Hockey NHL. Just type in Blues Hockey Podcast into Instagram or Facebook. We're there posting articles, just anything that news that happens. Every once in a while we do some live videos. So we'll continue during the off season. We kind of talked earlier about assessing Doug Armstrong's trades. That's going to be one thing we're going to do this off season. We always have a big, we don't know how we're going to work it this year, depending how the draft is. I saw the draft date got moved up today to, I think, October 6th. So we'll probably have a draft day special like we always do, live podcast, and keep going from there. So thanks for having me, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. And our best to Chris as well. Chris, I was really hoping would join the show. He's the only reason I invited your show on. You showed up, so, whatever.
Yeah, I know. I'm tagging along.
No, it's always good to have you on, Jason. We appreciate it. And you mentioned being the second most original Blues Hockey podcast. It's funny that you were actually I think you were our first emailer we ever had. We used to read emails on the show when we first started. And I remember you emailed in, and that was where you and I met, was because you were just so enthused. There was finally a Blues Hockey podcast. And then we were just happy to have you join. It's not a competition here. We love all the Blues Hockey podcasts that are out there because, hey, more coverage for the NHL here in St. Louis. I think that's how we all feel. So let's move on to Dominik. So Dominik, you, again, Lighthouse Hockey, the SB Nation blog. Where can they find you on the web? And if you have any social media or anything else you'd like to mention, please do so.
Yeah, we're at lighthousehockey.com, on Twitter at LHHockey. And we've got, they're Islanders focused podcasts, but, a bunch of Lighthouse Hockey podcasts with different hosts are available on Apple. Islanders is most amusing to the non-Islanders fan because it gets into the zeitgeist of the struggling until the past few years Islanders fan or hockey fan. But that's where we are. It's good to talk with you guys. I can always talk about these two teams forever. So good time.
No, it is. And again, we love the coverage that you've had over at Lighthouse Hockey. I bet you guys are going crazy over there right now. Posts every day. And I mean, I bet if people wanted to just refresh right now your site, there's probably something coming up soon.
Well, everybody had to weigh in with their thoughts after after making the conference final for the first time in almost 30 years. So it's been busy. Yeah,
I bet. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for coming on today. And again, this is Let's Go Blues Radio. Make sure you check out letsgoblues.com/shop for any shirts and stickers that you might be interested in. Subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also listen over at letsgoblues.com/radio. Twitter handles, show Twitter is at LGB Radio. Other hosts of this show, Kurt Price is at Kurt Price, Bill Days at Billy Blue Note, Jeff Ponder at jponder94. Next week, the long-awaited interview with Greg Millen will be up, so don't miss that. I know I've teased that one for quite a long time now, but we will finally have that up and ready to go next week. Greg Millen, an unbelievable interview that I had right before the bubble hockey started, so don't miss that one. Probably be next Wednesday. That will conclude this episode on behalf of Bill Day and Kurt Price, as well as Dominik Jansky of Lighthouse Hockey and Jason Martine of the Blues Hockey Podcast. I'm Jeff Ponder, and let's go Blues.